This is Garis book readings of my 2 published paper books, written and read aloud by Prof. Dr. Hugo Garis. Email profhugodegaris@yahoo.com. Website profhugodegaris.wordpress.com. This is largely the foreword to my second book, entitled Multis and Monos: What the Multicultured Can Teach the Monocultured Towards the Creation of a Global State. I begin with a list of chapter headings to give you a taste of what the book is about. So, firstly a foreword, and then chapter headings. Chapter 1, Introduction. 2, Countries, Pros and Cons. 3, Countries, Lessons to be Learned. 4, Costs of the Nation-State System. 5, Forces Creating Globa. That's the name I give to the global state, a fully democratic global state. 6, Institutions of Globa. 7, Forces Opposing Globa. 8, Routes to Globa. 9, Globa's Agenda. 10, Consequences of Globa. 11, Post-Globa. 12, Brief Summary. Now, for each chapter there are subsections. I'll read out the subsections for some of the chapters. It gets a bit boring and rather dull to give you them all, just to give you a taste that there's a substructure for each chapter. And parts. The book's in, 3 parts, I think? So part 1, chapter 1, Introduction. A, Overview of the book. B, Multis and Monos. C, From Multis to Globals. D, Globa, the idea of a global state. E, History of ideas for creating a global state. F, the historical size of political units. G, Building Globa, the political goal of the century. Chapter 2, Countries, Pros and Cons. A, Introduction. B, Australia. C, England. D, France. E, Germany. F, Japan. G, US. H, China. I, India. I'll do one more chapter in terms of substructure. Chapter 3, Countries, Lessons to be Learned. A, Overview. B, General Principles. C, Australia. D, England, France, Germany, Japan, US, China. Okay, I'll skip now to the foreword, but I have to find it. So I'm scrolling down the screen. Patience. Okay, forward. Let me increase the size so I get full screen. I'm reading from a 28-inch 4K monitor. So in a couple of years I'll probably buy myself maybe a 40-inch or more 8K monitor. I love these big machines. Foreword by... I just read it out. It takes too long to scroll. So the foreword is by Prof. Dr. Chris Hamer, who at the Department of Physics, the University of New South Wales, so he's a theoretical physicist. In Sydney, Australia. He wrote this foreword in 2007, and he is author of the book A Global Parliament, Principles of World Federation, published by Oyster Bay Books, 1998, and he's president of the World Citizens Association for Australia. Okay, so here is his foreword that he graciously wrote for me at my request, because I was impressed by his book. Long ago in ancient Greece, the great philosopher Socrates reputedly stated, "I am not an Athenian or a Greek, but a citizen of the world." Hugo Garis is the latest model of a world citizen, Born in Sydney, Australia, he has lived for extended periods in 7 different countries and different cultures, including England, Holland, Belgium, Japan, the USA, and finally China. This gives him an unrivaled basis for comparison between them. In the first part of the book, he gives a forthright analysis of the strengths and weaknesses of different cultures, which may be somewhat challenging for the monos, that is, the monocultured or simple nationalists among us. Readers should enjoy thinking about his comments on their own cultures, though his blunt comments may be confronting for some. He argues that each culture has its own strengths and weaknesses, and each has useful lessons that could be learned from the others. Thus the multis or multicultured world citizens have an advantage over monos by absorbing the superior aspects of other cultures. In a fundamental sense, we are all world citizens nowadays. We are all inhabitants of the same small planet, with common basic needs for food, shelter and companionship. We are also facing some major common problems which humanity has brought upon itself. Global warming and other forms of damage to the environment have become an alarming and increasing threat to our children's heritage. 60 years after World War II, mankind still faces a looming danger from the proliferation of nuclear weapons and other forms of mass destruction. Billions of the world's poor still face the ever-present dangers of famine, disease and war, and the basic human rights of many thousands of people are horribly violated every day without hope of redress, as has been seen most recently in Darfur. These are deep and difficult problems, and many people are no doubt in despair, feeling that they can never be solved. They can be solved, however, and they must be solved if humanity is to progress towards a bright and prosperous future. But they will only be solved if the peoples of the world work harmoniously together to construct a system of democratic global governance and binding international law. Government, after all, simply means controlling and directing the affairs of a state or society. Our present system of global governments, consisting primarily of the United Nations, is striving earnestly to deal with our problems, but is clearly inadequate to the task. This theme is developed in the second half of the book, which discusses in detail the concept of globa, or global state. Everyone is aware of those forces which are inexorably pulling us together: economic globalization, the internet, the global media, and the surging tides of international travellers. And yet on the political front, progress seems to have stalled since World War II. Despite many and repeated calls for reform, the United Nations has remained clamped in its rigid constitutional framework for over 60 years. On the regional scale, however, much more progress has been achieved, led by the gradual development of the European Union. If this example can somehow be extended to the global stage, the ideal of democratic global governance may at last come within our reach. The book deals with these questions in a clear and forthright language. It delves into the detailed structure and functions of the forthcoming global state, discusses the factors which are holding it back, and discusses numerous possible routes to its creation. The consequences of global state, both positive and negative, are explored in an even-handed fashion. In the long run, the establishment of a global state is inevitable unless humanity succeeds in destroying itself beforehand. This is simply because the increasing global problems of our human society demand a global response and global mechanisms for dealing with them. Hugo de Garis is optimistic on this point and predicts that the goal will be achieved by the end of this century, and quite probably by mid-century. The globist amongst us must pray that he is right and work hard to make it so. Citizens of all political stripes, however, will enjoy reading the new ideas and challenging arguments presented in this book. It's an important new contribution to the debate. Prof. Dr. Chris Hamer, Hamer, Department of Physics, University of New South Wales, Sydney, Australia, the year... Oh, maybe that's a postcode. I'm not sure. Probably a postcode, sorry. 2007. I think I made a mistake earlier on. I think that's a postcode. Author of A Global Parliament, Principles of World Federation. President of World Citizens Association for Australia. And that's the end of the foreword. Ciao.